Welcome everyone to Pathways Through the Orchard. Tonight we begin a new book, the book of Exodus, the book of Shemot, and we have many insights for tonight. The first one is Moshe Rabbeinu is introduced in this Torah portion, and he will become the main figure for the whole rest of the Torah. So what I want to look at right away is the first thing it says about the birth of Moshe. So this is in the second chapter, the first verse. It says, Vayelech ish mi beit Levi, v'yikach et bat Levi. A man went out from the house of Levi, the tribe of Levi, and he took a daughter from the house of Levi. According to tradition, who is this talking about? Amram and Yocheved, Moshe's parents. They were married, and according to tradition, when the decree, which has already been mentioned in the Torah, we're jumping ahead a bit, the decree has already been made by Pharaoh that all the boys should be thrown into the Nile and killed, and the daughters can be saved. So according to the commentaries, Amram divorced his wife because he just felt, how can we bring more children into the world? And at that point, Miriam, who is the eldest of Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe, she said to her father, "You're worse than Pharaoh. Pharaoh has decreed on the boys, you, because you're the leader of the generation, by your divorcing your wife, or at least separating from your wife, you are decreeing on the boys and the girls, there'll be no more children. So you're, in a sense, worse than Pharaoh." And according to tradition, that's the context of this verse, that Levi returns to his wife. And then the next verse is, V'tahar ha'isha, and Moshe's mother became pregnant. V'teled ben, and she gave birth to a son. V'tereh oto, and she saw him, ki tovhu, that he was good. V'titzpanehu shlosha yerachim, and she hid him for 3 months. So what does this verse mean? Why did she hide him for 3 months? There's a decree against all the boys. And the police are everywhere. They know who's pregnant, and they know who's about to give birth. According to tradition, Moshe is born premature. He's born at 6 months. And that's why it says that they hid him for 3 months, because it wasn't expected for her to give birth for another 3 months. But our question, what I want to focus on, is what does it mean that she saw him, that he was good? So according to one of the most important teachings from Rabbi Ginsburg, where he has created a method of taking a verse, taking a word, an idea, a concept, and showing how it is manifest and revealed in the different Sefirot. So in my research, and I'm not saying this is exclusive, there are actually other opinions, but I've chosen 7 of the main opinions as to what does it mean that he was good. And I'm going to explain it according to the 7 lower Sefirot. And it works out absolutely beautifully. It's a very special organizational tool to understand the Torah. So let's start with Chesed. So one of the ideas is the first time the word Tov is mentioned in the Torah is when God creates light, V'yomer Elokim Yehi Or, Vayihi Or, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And the next verse says, V'yar Elokim et Or Ki Tov. He saw the light that it was good. And so the tradition tells us that what does it mean that they saw he was good? That the room filled with light when he was born. And so this is the connection. In other words, it's actually a very deep connection that Moshe shines, reflects, reveals this original light of creation. Now, this light, we're told, was hidden away. The light of the first day of creation was a spiritual light. It transcended mere physical light. And we're told that it was hidden away until the time to come. And what is important, it's called the Or HaGanuz, the hidden light. And it's pointed out that it doesn't say it was taken away. It was hidden. So then the question is, well, where was it hidden? So there are many answers to this. The main one is it was hidden in the Torah. That's why the Torah is called light. Ner mitzvah, the Torah or. A mitzvah is like a candle. Torah is like a all-encompassing light. Others say it's hidden in the lights of Shabbos, in Shabbos. And that's the secret of ushering in Shabbos with candles, with light. Because this is representing and actually revealing this hidden light. Another opinion is that it's in the light of the menorah in the temple. And then it became revealed in the lights of Hanukkah. So these are different opinions. And so the fact that Moshe is described as being good means that the soul of Moshe is intrinsically connected to this spiritual light, and especially the light of Torah. And that is why eventually it's Moshe who brings down the Torah to Israel from Mount Sinai. He is the channel. He is the Merkavah, the chariot that brings this hidden light and helps to reveal it. So that is in Chesed. Why is it Chesed? Because the 7 days of creation go according to the 7 Sefirot. The first day of creation is manifest God's loving kindness in creating the world. So this is the Chesed, and that God's light can be accessed, can be connected to. This is God's Chesed, that God can be approached, God can be revealed, can be thought of, can be prayed to. This is all God's Chesed. So let's look at Gevura. So Gevura is strength. So as I mentioned, she gave birth to Moshe at 6 months. And at that time, a premature baby, it's not like now in the hospital, they could be all hooked up and the preemie ward and the whole thing. A baby at 6 months is it's somewhat dangerous. So one of the opinions is that she saw that he was good, means she saw that he was strong, that he would make it. He was strong, he would make it. Sefirot means beauty. And so one of the expressions when the Torah wants to say that someone was beautiful, so the expression is tov mar'eh. In English, we call it good looking. Good looking. And so here on the level of Tiferet, it's the light that was emanating from Moshe and the strength that was emanating from him translated itself into beauty. He was a beautiful child. So much so that when the daughter of Pharaoh, if you can imagine, she hears crying. She sees a little ark on the Nile River, and she pulls it over. Let's say he was ugly. Well, she might have like, okay, here, I'm putting you back in the ark and go down the river. Obviously, her compassion was aroused, but it must have been that Moshe was emanating a spiritual beauty, if not a physical beauty. So that's Tiferet. Then we have Netzach and Hod. We should mention that Netzach and Hod are compared to the legs. And the Arizal says an amazing thing. If we would ask ourselves, from which sefira does prophecy come from? Prophetic sight, vision. So we might think from Keter, from the highest sefira, from Chachma and Bina and Dat, from the very lofty intellectual sefira. The Arizal says prophecy comes from Netzach and Hod. Why? Because Netzach and Hod is the part of a human being which is connected to intuition and like the gut. The gut feeling that many, many times supersedes what our intellect is telling us, and sometimes what our heart is telling us. We have this intuition, this gut feeling about a certain matter. And it supersedes logic. We don't know why we have this feeling. And it's even more than a feeling of the heart. And so the Arizal says that's where prophecy comes from. So here we can explain that she saw that he was good. She saw that she herself, we're told, this is an aside, but we're told that when parents give birth to a child and they need to name the child, that they're graced with a little bit of prophecy in order to choose the right name that represents the essence of this child. Okay, you see a little baby, it's like very hard in the level of logic or even emotion to understand, like, who are they going to be? Like, who is this neshama? And yet parents are granted a little bit of prophecy to detect the essence of a child. And so she saw that he was fitting to be a prophet and fitting to be a redeemer. That's Netzach and Hod. And this is connected to the Midrash that it's a continuation really of what we learned before about Miriam, that Miriam says to her father, you're worse than Pharaoh. There'll be no more children. So when Moshe is born, Miriam, who is one of the 7 known prophetesses in the Tanakh, so she said, this is the Redeemer we've been waiting for. She was 5 years old at the time, and she could see he was good. She saw that he would be a great prophet and he would be the Redeemer. And we're actually told that when they put Moshe's ark in the water, the astrologers came to Pharaoh and said, we no longer need this decree because the Redeemer has been put into the Nile. Now they had what's called unclear prophecy. They couldn't see that he wasn't drowned by the police, but that they could see that he was put in the water. And so we're told that the decree was canceled. And Miriam picked up on this energy. This is Netzach and Hod, and she saw that he would be the greatest of the prophets, and he would be the Redeemer. So that's Netzach and Hod. Yesod is always connected to 2 concepts: the tzaddik, the righteous person, and to the sexual energy. And what's called the tikkun habrit, the rectification of sexual energy, is always connected to Yosef, because he was able to push off the advances of the wife of Potiphar. And so he is called the tzaddik, Yosef and tzaddik. And Yosef and tzaddik are always connected to Yesod. So what does it have to do with Moshe? So according to tradition, Moshe was born circumcised. And actually, this is not like a spiritual idea here. Even today, there are actually children born. It's not common, but are born circumcised without the foreskin. It's rare, but it does happen. And according to tradition, Moshe was born circumcised. He was born with a rectified sexual energy. So that's Yesod. And also, of course, Moshe was a great tzaddik. So that's his aspect of Yesod. And in the Psalms, it's the tzaddik is called tov, is called good. That's the main point here. So we're looking for all these different meanings of tov as it relates to the Sefirot. The last one is Malchut, is kingship. Later, Moshe had the status of a king. Before there were kings in Israel, he was not an official king, but as the leader of Israel, he had the status of king. And later in the book of Devarim, it says, Vayi b'Shurun melech. There was a king. Yeshurun is a name that's like Yisrael. Yeshurun. There are many synagogues that are called Yeshurun. So it says, Vayi melech, Vayi b'Yeshurun melech. There was in Yeshurun a king. Some say it refers to God. God is the ultimate king. Others say it refers to Moshe because he had the status of king. And king, of course, is connected to Malchut, which means kingship. But here we see that from this verse that they saw that he was good, we're told that his original name was either Tov or Tuvia, because they saw that he was good. They saw that he was good. According to the Midrash, I don't have it in front of me, but Moshe actually had 10 different names. And each one they give an explanation. But two of the most essential ones is Tov and Tuvia. And that's his malchut, that's his identity. The name Moshe, as we see in this parsha, was given to him by the daughter of Pharaoh. And the daughter of Pharaoh, who according to tradition came out of Egypt with Israel, and she became a convert. And some even say, the Zohar says, what was she doing at the Nile that day that Moshe happened to be put in the Nile? She was going there to immerse, to convert. That's what it says in the Zohar. But everyone agrees that she eventually converted, and she came out of Egypt with the Jewish people, and she was given a very special name by God, Batia, the daughter of God. She was considered a very, very righteous woman, Batia. So here we've gone through 7 different explanations of what does it mean that they saw that he was good. And as I said in the beginning, this is a method that Rav Ginsburg uses at this point thousands of times to explain just about anything in the Torah by showing that every name, every word, every verse, every concept can be understood through the Sefirot. So today we did through the 7 lower Sefirot. That is our first insight. Now we're going to go to the burning bush, the whole incident at the burning bush. This is one of the most fascinating dialogues in the entire Tanakh, and it's one of the longest also, that we have this dialogue between a human being and God. According to tradition, it went on for 7 days. When we read it, it's like it's happening all at once. But according to tradition, it was a 7-day conversation between God and Moshe over whether Moshe will take upon himself being the leader to take Israel out of Egypt. And it begins with God appearing to Moshe at the burning bush. And that begins the conversation. And so towards the beginning of the conversation, so it says like this. This is in the 3rd chapter, the 8th verse. This is God speaking here. And it says, Ve'ered lahatzilo miyad Mitzrayim. God says, I will descend and I will save them from the hand of Egypt. Ulahaloto mina oretz, and bring them up out of the land, hahu, el eretz tova urachava, to a good and broad land, el eretz zavat chalav udavash, to a land flowing with milk and honey. And then it continues, but that's the part of the verse that I want to address. This phrase, zavat chalav udavash, eretz Zavat chalav udavash, a land flowing with milk and honey. There's a very well-known phrase in the Torah, and it is repeated many times, actually. This is the first time. This is the first time that the land of Israel is described. First, it says it's good and it's broad. And then it says that it's flowing, a land flowing with milk and honey. So what I want to explore now is just the part of the phrase, Eretz Zavat Chalav Udavash, a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, what we learn from this is, again, this is at the beginning of the conversation, where God is kind of putting forward what the plan is here. In other words, Moshe, I want you to be the leader, but I will bring them out of Egypt, and I will bring them to Eretz Yisrael. So what we see from this is, from the very beginning of the redemption of Israel from Egypt, it was not only to receive the Torah at Sinai. And actually here, it only mentions one time that when Moshe asked for a sign, God says, when I take you out, you will return to this mountain and serve me, which is an allusion to, you will return to this mountain. Sinai and Sneh. The word for bush is Sneh. The burning bush is Sneh, which is very similar to Sinai. It's the same root. And we're told that this occurrence of the burning bush happens in the desert of Sinai. So God says, when I take you out, you will return here. It doesn't say explicitly, and I will give you the Torah, but it says, you will return to here and you will serve me here. But it does say explicitly that the ultimate purpose for coming out of Egypt is for me to bring you to the land of Israel. And this is the purpose of the Torah as well, is to receive the Torah so that we could bring it into Eretz Yisrael and be a light into the nations from the Holy Land. So this is connected to a very important appearance of the same term, Eretz Zavat Chalav Udavash, a land flowing with milk and honey. This is in Parshat Be'et Hanan. Again, this is not the only other place. It's mentioned many times. But in Parshat Be'et Hanan, in the 6th Aliyah, is the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. The beginning of the 6th Aliyah. The end of the 5th Aliyah ends with the words, Eretz Zavat Chalav Udavash. So there's a very deep connection between the oneness of God and our mission to reveal the oneness of God to the world and the land of Israel. So I learned a beautiful thing from Rav Ginsburg. If you take the words Eretz, Chalav, Davash, the first letters, Eretz is an Aleph, Chalav is a Chet, Davash is a Daled, spells Echad. And so that's why this verse comes right before the Shema, because we're told that ultimately and ideally, the people of Israel are meant to be in the land of Israel. This is our homeland. This is the Holy Land. The fact that we were scattered all over the world for 2,000 years, actually going back to the first temple for 2,500 years, this is not the natural way it's supposed to be. The fact that we were able to thrive in exile despite all the oppression is truly a miracle. But the ideal situation is for the Jewish people to be in Eretz Yisrael. So the juxtaposition of this of the words Eretz Zavad Chalav Udavash with the Shema. So this points out another thing that the sages say, and we have to take this with a grain of salt. Many times the sages would say things in a very sharp, definitive way, but they said someone who lives outside of Israel is like someone who doesn't have a God. So that's like, whoa, that's a pretty strong statement. But what they meant was, they're not really saying a Jew living outside of Israel doesn't have a God. But it was saying, like, in comparison to being in the land of Israel, it's as if one doesn't have the same connection. Now, this also is relative. So I'll just bring two examples. One is a very famous statement by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. The Baal Shem Tov, who is Rabbi Nachman's great-grandfather, tried to come to Eretz Yisrael in the, I think around the 1730s. And he got very close. He was on a boat from Istanbul to Akko, and the boat was hijacked, pirated, and he almost died. He didn't make it. But his great-grandson, Rabbi Nachman, made it to Eretz Yisrael. And he was here for 9 months. And he actually arrived during the Napoleon Wars. Napoleon was trying to conquer the land of Israel. And he got as far as Akko, which was a major port in those days. And he was stopped. And Rabbi Nachman arrives right at almost the height of the battle for Eretz Yisrael with Napoleon. He was here for 9 months, and he returned to Europe. And then anytime someone would ask, just like, where are you going? He would always say, I'm always going to Israel. I'm always on my way to Israel. There's another story that's less known, but is very important, is a story that Tzemach Tzedek, who is the third Chabad Rebbe, one of his students wanted really desperately to move to the land of Israel. At that point, slowly, people were actually starting to move to Israel. And he very much wanted to move to Israel. And the Tzemach Tzedek did not feel that it was right for this person. Also, I have to mention, it was very dangerous. It could take 3 to 6 months to get from Europe to Israel, going through strange cities, lots of oppression happening, lots of robbers and just pirates, you name it. Anyways, he told him he would not give him a blessing to come to Israel. And he said to him, make the land of Israel here. In other words, there is a physical Eretz Yisrael, and there's also a spiritual, mental space that we can create around ourselves that can approximate the land of Israel. So this is a very, very important teaching. I have to say, this is a personal insight, is after being in Israel for many years, when I would go back to the United States, I would feel lost. I have to say, I had a very hard time praying. I just felt like a total fish out of water. Eventually, because we went back to visit family and parents, it was important, I got over it. But part of it was this idea, okay, for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I will not be in Israel. I got to deal with it. I can't like lose myself. And so I learned a little bit to make Eretz Yisrael here. So this is important for everyone, that you can take Eretz Yisrael with you, but it's not the same. It is not the same. I see, I'm looking right at Susan from Denver, and I was in Denver for 7 years, which is a long time. And we only made it back to Israel one time during those 7 years. And we made lifelong friends. We were doing great work there, had a great community, but deep down inside, I always felt like a fish out of water. I really did. But we made the best of it, and it was the best. It was 7 really good years, and that actually we learned in last week's parsha Vayechi, where it says that Yaakov lived for 17 years in the land of Egypt, and we're told it was the best years of his life. And everyone else, but he was in exile. How could it be the best years of his life? Well, he made it the best years of his life because he saw in the future most of Jewish history would happen in exile. And so we have to learn to take Eretz Yisrael with us and to live. So anyone out there in Chutz La'aretz, I'm giving you a bracha. One, to come home, and short of that, hold on to Eretz Yisrael wherever you are. Let it be your inspiration. Okay, so now a really important gematria. Chalav udavash, milk and honey, equals erech apayim, which means patience, long suffering, but it means the art of patience. The word in modern Hebrew is savlanut, and you really have to learn this word in Israel. Savlanut. You have to have patience, especially dealing with so many things you have to deal with here. Not that red tape is exclusive to Israel. It most certainly is not. But anyone who has experienced the wrong side of red tape knows what an important thing is having patience is. So this is brought down in a lot of Hasidic books, this connection of Israel with patience. And as I just pointed out, it's quite paradoxical, because one of the experiences that people have very often, those who are visiting and those who live here, is a certain lack of patience in Israeli society. And I see David smiling over there because probably knows what I mean. Anyone who's been to Israel, so you know that people here can, and it's part of the dynamism of Israel. Everything has both sides to it. Israel is an incredibly dynamic society. It is cutting edge in so many ways. And people are just in a hurry. people need to get things done. People need to accomplish. People need to move forward. And sometimes that leads to people talking and acting in a way that is exactly the opposite of patience. So that's a deep secret of Eretz Yisrael. But let's look at the other side. What other people had the patience to wait 2,000 years with a dream? It was a dream. What people have been scattered all over the world, no power, no armies, not head of any governments. And yeah, we're going to go back to Israel someday. And on top of that, Mashiach is going to come. Well, that took 2,000 years of patience not to let go of our dream. So everything is weighed like that. So this connection of Eretz Yisrael to Erech Apayim, that's the term in Hebrew. And this term Erech Apayim is one of the attributes of God as revealed in the 13 Midot of Rachamim, in the 13 aspects of compassion. So when we have patience, we are connecting to one of the attributes of God. We are emulating God through having patience. So here I want to point out quickly that we're told that there are 3 cardinal sins in the Torah that have to do with a lack of patience. And there's really a 4th one as well. But the 3 that most people talk about is that Adam and Eve, again, by tradition, it doesn't mention this in the Torah, but according to tradition, had they waited until Shabbat, they could have eaten not only from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but they could have eaten from the tree of life. So we're told it was a lack of patience. The second one was the golden calf. According to the people's reckoning, Moshe is 6 hours late. Moshe says, I'm going to be gone for 40 days, 40 nights, and I will return with the Torah. According to their calculation, he was 6 hours late. According to Moshe's understanding, he wasn't late at all. After 6 hours, the people we don't know where Moshe is. We need a leader. Let's make a golden calf. So this is held out to be a total lack of patience. They couldn't wait even a day to see maybe Moshe is coming. Okay, we're not going into all the details and all the different midrashim, but it's held that this sin was comparable to Adam and Eve not having the patience to wait until it was proper to eat from the tree. And the third one that's brought is that David goes up to the roof and he sees this beautiful woman, and he sees not that it's just a beautiful woman. He sees that this is his ultimate soulmate. The Gemara says that what David saw is that Bathsheba was his soulmate from the 6 days of creation. That's the term that they use. Sheshet Yemei Bereshit. He saw this is his soulmate, but he couldn't wait to have relations with her in a more proper way. And that led to a whole life of tshuva for King David. So here we see 3 sins, and they all have to do with a lack of patience. The 4th one, which is not always mentioned with these 3, but could be, and that is when the spies come back after 40 days spying out the land, and they come and they give an evil report. And even though two of the spies said, no, they're wrong. We can go to the land. We can conquer the land. But it says that they stood at their tents and cried, and they said, let's pick a new leader and let's go back to Egypt. They couldn't even what's called sleep on it. They had two different versions of could they conquer the land or couldn't they? They had no patience. It's like, let's just go back to Egypt. It's like, of course, according to tradition, that was Tisha B'Av. That was the first Tisha B'Av. So that was also a lack of patience. So we're actually told well, here, I'm going to say it like this. When do we feel, see, the word here again is a land flowing with milk and honey. This idea of flowing. So if we ask ourselves, it's a modern term. We want everything to flow in our life. So when do we feel that flow? Well, we feel that flow when we're not uptight, when we're not pressured, when we're not stressed. Then we have a chance of feeling a flow of life. And when do we feel that? Shabbos. Shabbos is when we feel a lack of stress and we have patience. During the week, it's 24/6. We're always, our minds are always involved in dealing with the world. And this problem and this obstacle and this challenge, it's very hard to feel a calm flow in our lives during the week. But then Shabbos comes, and that's when we feel the flow. And that's what we're told, that Shabbos is like returning to the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden before the sin. That's when life really flowed. Everything was provided. It says they were naked and they were not ashamed. Just everything was utopia, bliss, perfection. So that's a taste of Shabbat. That's when things are flowing. And that's why on Shabbos we feel this erech apayim. We feel patience. We feel calmness. And so that's just a very, very beautiful connection. When we talked about the Sefirot, so the sphere of Malchut is Shabbat. The 6 days of the week are the 6 lower Sefirot, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Shabbat is Malchut. That's why we refer to Shabbos as the Shabbos queen, Malchut, the Shabbos queen. And so who represented Malchut more than anyone is David. David is the king from which the ultimate king will come, Melech HaMashiach, the messianic king. So David is connected to Malchut. Shabbos is connected to Malchut. And we mentioned before the lighting of candles on Shabbat. And we're actually told in Halacha that the reason that we light candles in Shabbat, remember, we have to go back to pre-electricity, why there had to be a lamp lit or candles lit. And so the halacha says that if there's no light in the house, then people are going to stumble over each other and everything. And then a husband will get upset at his wife, and there'll be no shalom bayit. That's the idea, that the lighting of candles in Shabbat is to ensure that there is shalom bayit on Shabbat. This is the epitome of Malchut. So we have a beautiful idea here, is that the sweetness of Shabbat, this is a land flowing with milk and honey. Shabbat is sweet. And so the three letters of sweet, Davash, the Dalet is David, and the Bet and the Shin is Bat Sheva. David Bat Sheva. And we're going to go one step further, is that if you take the names David Bat Sheva and spell them out, it equals exactly Shalom Bayit. Shalom Bayit. So here we're like putting a lot together, that David didn't have the patience with Bathsheba. But when you really think about it, he really had a prophecy. This is his soulmate. And because he took her before he should have, it led to the prophet coming to him and telling him that how wrong he had done, and David doing tshuva for the rest of his life. And Bathsheba became pregnant, and the baby died. This was a tragic thing. So you might think that, okay, that's the end of David and Bathsheba. Like, it's like obvious this is not the way it's supposed to be. But what happened? No, they stayed married. She was his primary wife, and it is Bathsheba's son, Shlomo, who inherited the crown. And so here Bathsheba and David made a tremendous tikkun on a lack of patience. They saw it out to the end. They saw each other as soulmates, and it got off to a very rocky start that would have probably broken just about any other couple. And yet they saw it through to the end. So these are just very beautiful hints that the sweetness of Shabbat, the connection to Malchut, the connection to David and Bathsheba, and its connection to patience and to Shalom Bayit, it all fits together here. Okay, I want to do one more insight. One more insight. The Baal Shem Tov revealed that we all have a spark of Mashiach. We all have a spark of Mashiach. And that when enough individuals actualize and realize their individual spark of Mashiach, it will create a critical mass of spiritual energy, which will draw down the soul of Mashiach into this world. This is how Rav Ginsburg terms it, that when enough people realize their individual spark of Mashiach, It will create a critical mass and draw the soul of Mashiach into the world. The Alter Rebbe said, in addition to that, everyone has a spark of Moshe in them. So what are these two sparks? The spark that the Baal Shem Tov was talking about is the spark of leadership. That's why the Jewish people are a leader nation. Whatever country we found ourselves in, whatever profession we found ourselves in, whatever circumstance we found ourselves in, we will rise to the top. That is the spark of Mashiach within each person. The spark that the Alter Rebbe was talking about is the spark of intellect. The spark of intellect is the spark of Moshe. Now we learn about Moshe, Hua Goel Rishon, Hua Goel Acharon. Moshe is the first redeemer, and he is the last redeemer. The soul of Moshe is the soul of Mashiach. Moshe and David together are the soul of Mashiach. And so there's a very unique thing about Moshe that the Torah testifies, that God spoke to Moshe panim el panim, face to face, and peh el peh, mouth to mouth. These are very, very unique terms, that God spoke to Moshe, a human being, face to face and mouth to mouth. But we have a contradiction here, that when Moshe asks God, show me your ways, God said, no one can see my face and live. I will show from behind, but no one can see my face and live. So the question is, so what does it mean that God spoke to Moshe face to face? So the Talmud explains what it means is not literally. Literally, we are not capable of fully understanding the essence of God. That's beyond human capability. We can get close, we can get approximate, but we can cling to God, we can emulate God, but to 100% know God, that is a little bit beyond our capabilities. So the Talmud says what it means is what a student-teacher relationship. For the teacher to be effective, the teacher has to show what's called a good face to the student. In other words, if the teacher is gruff, short, lack of patience, mean, well, how much is the student going to want to learn from the teacher? The teacher has to show a kind, goodly face to the student. So that's how the Talmud explains that God spoke to Moshe face to face. Nonetheless, we are told that Moshe is the greatest prophet to ever have lived, and no one was on the level of Moshe, and his kind of prophecy is expressed face to face and mouth to mouth. So now, if we have a spark of Moshe, that means we also have a capability to also speak to God face to face and mouth to mouth. And what is that ability? What is that opportunity? Prayer. Prayer is the way, the method that we can approach God and speak to God mouth to mouth, face to face, and now I'll add another one, heart to heart. It says in the Zohar, there's a type of voice that you can hear. In prayer, we enunciate the words. But then the Zohar says that there is what's called kala pnima delo ishtama. There is an inner voice that is not heard. And this is when we approach God heart to heart. And we're told, actually, when God gave the Torah to Am Yisrael, it said that the mountain was on fire ad lev hashamayim, to the heart of heaven. And I remember this is one of Reb Shlomo's favorite expressions. When he wanted to express the profundity of something, or the depths of something, or an exalted experience, he would say it was ad lev hashamayim. It was to the heart of heaven. So here we see this idea that is bequeathed to us, this idea of being able to approach God and have at least a semblance, a spark of speaking to God face to face, mouth to mouth, and maybe even more important, heart to heart. So even though Moshe, according to the Alter Rebbe, the spark that we have is the spark of intellect. And it's true, Moshe is connected with the sphere of Dat and Bina and Chachma. But we also know that Moshe, it was described as the most humble person on the face of the earth. And he was also full of compassion. He was able to defend Israel and to lead Israel through thick and thin because of his incredible sense of compassion to others. And that's Moshe's heart. So the voice that we get from Moshe is the voice that can be heard, the voice of intellect, the voice of logic. But the voice of Moshe that we get is kala pnima delo ishtama, the inner voice that is not heard, except, of course, God hears heart to heart. May we all be blessed to approach God in this manner.